By the early 19th century, the East India Company possessed a maritime force capable of crushing rival nations. It was a private corporation that ruled over 1/5 of the world's population. At its peak, it generated nearly half of all global trade. To protect this footprint, the company maintained a private army of 200,000 men. That force was larger than the official military of the British Empire itself. Observing this immense concentration of power in 1788, parliamentarian Edmund Burke described the enterprise as a state in the disguise of a merchant. A merchant collective that began with a simple royal charter in 1600 managed to usurp the mighty Mughal Empire. Yet this same dominant entity would end in total bankruptcy. The East India Company's long history traces a dramatic trajectory, from massive commercial growth to a violent final liquidation. The mechanism that transformed the company into an empire was established in India through the 1765 Treaty of Allahabad. Under this treaty, the company acquired the Diwani rights. This legal authority allowed a foreign trading firm to collect taxes directly from the millions of citizens in Bengal, Bihar, and Orissa. This chart illustrates the scale of extraction. The company suddenly pulled in approximately £3 million in revenue annually. Out of that vast sum, they paid the Mughal emperor an annual allowance of just £260,000. None of the remaining profit was reinvested into the local economy or public infrastructure. The company used the tax revenue of the Bengali people to fund its own military expansion and secure further territories. Paying the emperor a fraction of the region's output provided a veneer of legitimacy to what was, in practice, a hostile economic takeover. The Diwani rights broke the traditional merchant model, creating a self-perpetuating cycle where corporate extraction funded the military force required to take even more. With the revenues from then gods securing their base in India, the executives in London constructed a highly lucrative triangular trade network. The first pillar of this global portfolio was the mass exportation of Indian textiles, which grew to account for 70% of the company's total exports by 1850. The second pillar focused on the consumer market back in Britain, where the company imported 30 million pounds of Chinese tea every year by the 1830s. Because China demanded silver rather than British goods, the company financed these massive tea purchases through a third illicit pillar, smuggling Indian-grown opium into Chinese ports. Looking at this graph of the opium trade, the escalation is staggering. The company expanded its smuggling operations from 4,000 chests in 1800 to over 40,000 chests annually by 1839. This massive supply chain was protected by heavy corporate security. Their merchant vessels, known as East Indiamen, were armed with up to 28 cannons, while local sepoy regiments garrisoned 3 distinct presidencies across India. The company was now a weaponized global monopoly, enforcing its supply chain through military strength rather than commercial competition. Back in Bengal, the sheer extractive pressure of this system collided with severe drought and consecutive crop failures in 1769. The resulting disaster became known as the Great Bengal Famine, leading to the starvation of an estimated 1.2 million people. Instead of providing relief, company officials hoarded available grain to sell at inflated prices and deployed soldiers to violently enforce tax collections on starving farmers. While millions died in India, shareholders in London convened and voted to increase their corporate dividend from 10% to 12.5%. At the absolute peak of the famine, the modern equivalent of £100 million was funneled out of Bengal and remitted back to executives in Britain. By treating human lives as expendable line items, the company hollowed out the region's agricultural base, systematically destroying the very foundation of its own wealth. Plundering a starving population proved unsustainable. By 1772, massive debts and internal corruption brought the mismanaged corporate empire to the brink of total bankruptcy. Desperate for capital, the company secured a £1.5 million government bailout. In exchange, Parliament passed the Regulating Act of 1773, forcing the first layer of state oversight onto the corporation. Over the following decades, the British government slowly stripped the company's monopolies. This culminated in 1833, when lawmakers cynically transferred the entirety of the company's commercial debt onto the Indian public ledger. The final breaking point arrived with the Indian Uprising of 1857. In a matter of months, the company's fractured, overextended administrative framework violently collapsed. The scale of the rebellion proved that a private board of directors and a corporate military could not safely or effectively govern an entire subcontinent. Parliament responded with the ultimate hostile takeover. Through the Government of India Act of 1858, the state formally stripped the company of all its remaining territories and armed forces. Absolute control was transferred to the British Crown under Queen Victoria. The corporation was liquidated, and the British Raj began. The East India Company's attempt to wield absolute sovereign power eventually collapsed under the weight of its own extraction. It left behind a militarized administration that the British state would occupy for nearly a century, turning a corporate footprint into a formal empire.